This video is looking at working with older language. So sometimes you might get a poem which is written in the Romantic period or maybe even earlier, or has got a little bit of a later date on it, but it's using long sentences. It's using kind of slightly different word order and a more elaborate vocabulary than maybe you're used to in some modern poetry. So this video isn't so much looking at analysing the detail of this poem, it's looking at how you go about understanding the plot, the story, the narrative of a poem that's written in this style. Now, we're going to use London Snow by Robert Bridges, and the section we're looking at is an extract. Okay, the poem itself is a little bit longer than this. You can see the whole poem online. Poetry Foundation has got one version of it online. So this is going to go on the basis that you've had a read of the poem yourself to start off with. And if you haven't read it, then just take a moment to pause this video and read it from here on in for yourself. Okay, now the first thing to look at, obviously when we're looking at an unseen poem, you're going to go to the title first of all to see what expectations, what ideas the title's setting up. And here London Snow is pretty helpful. You know, we suspect that we're going to get a poem about snow and it's going to be set in London. And I think both of those things prove to be true. So the next kind of thing we've really got to look at is the fact that this poem has got some monster sentences in it. So if we start looking for the first sentence, we can see actually, I'm just going to put those two red lines there. I think that is the first sentence. So straight away we've got this idea of, hang on, this writer, Bridges, is really using longer sentences for some reason. Now, we might go on to reflect about the fact that that could be the drift of snow or the incessant, the endless falling of the snow. It could be the building up of the effect of the snow. But for now, we've got quite a lot of unpicking to do on those sentences. I quickly start scanning through and think, actually, this is something that's going to be a thing in this poem because there's our next end of the sentence. And then straight away, just skimming the rest, you can see I've chosen to cut the extract there at Oh Look at the Trees. So we've basically got these three sentences spread over a number of lines. And don't forget when you're dealing with poetry that there's a difference between a sentence and a line, right? One thing I am noticing is the line, all the end stopping at the end of the lines. So straight away, I'm seeing that we've got, more often than not, we are being asked to pause at the end of a line. Sometimes we're being asked to pause in the middle of the line. So here we've got this caesura, or these caesura, in the middle. Oh, there's another one there, right? As things are building up. But we know that end stopping, we are going to pause at the end of each line when we're reading. So the first thing I would recommend you do is that you start to unpick this kind of clause by clause. And sometimes we're going to get the right kind of word order that makes sense. Sometimes we're going to get more complicated word order, that syntax, the order is going to be kind of turned around. And sometimes we're going to have to work out exactly what's being said. So our first bit, when men were all asleep, the snow came flying. So that, I think, is fairly clear. Okay, this poem is set at night and it starts to snow. If we're reading for analysis, if we're reading to see how the writer has used language effectively, we might do a little circle of that verb flying there because, you know, it's not falling, it's flying. That might have ideas later on. So in large white flakes falling on the city brown. Now, we understand in large white flakes falling on the city brown, the brown city. Okay, so we've got the city is brown and we know that snow is white. So we've got that contrast of colour. So when everyone was asleep, the snow came flying. It was falling in large white flakes on the brown city. stealthily and perpetually settling and loosely lying. So if we don't know the word stealthily, we can maybe get stealth out of it. So it's kind of sneaking up. Perpetually, if something is perpetual, it keeps on going forever. Okay, so perpetually settling, it's settling over a long, long period of time. So the snow, it's not hitting the ground and melting, it's sticking, right? And then loosely lying. So we've got the snow coming down quietly, the snow coming down and settling and sticking, and it lying loosely on the floor. Hushing the latest traffic of the drowsy town. Now, drowsy, think if you're drowsy, you're tired, and we know the poem's set at night, and hushing is to make things quiet. So actually the snow is changing the louder noises into kind of quiet. So it's softening everything. Deadening, muffling, stifling its murmurs, failing. Okay, so we've got deadening, kind of making it quieter, muffling, making it quieter, stifling. If you stifle something, you kind of, if you stifle somebody, put your kind of hand on their mouth and nose and you're trying to suffocate them. If you're stifling something, stopping it from growing, you're stopping it from doing well or developing. And we're looking at this particular section to see, well, what is the snow doing? So stifling its murmurs, failing. We still seem to be talking about the snow. So any noises that the snow is encountering or making are not happening really. We then move in lazily and incessantly floating down and down. So you've got that repetition there, kind of emphasising how fast and how thick it's coming. But this snow itself is kind of personified lazily, and incessantly means it's not stopping. Okay, if something is incessant, it means it's not going to stop, it's constantly on. We then move to silently sifting. Think of the sibilants we've got there. If you're sifting through something, you're sort of sorting through it. Okay, you're kind of if you think of putting like sand in a sieve and then shaking the sieve from side to side, you're sifting there. Think of the way that flour would fall out of a sieve as well. That's sifting. And veiling, road, roof and railing. Now, again, we've got that nice liquid alliteration there. But veiling, if you veil something, you cover it. So we've got our snow now is turning things white that were brown, is making things quiet that were noisy, and is covering things up, right? Hiding difference, making unevenness even. So it's kind of levelling things out, it's smoothing things out, right? Into angles and crevices, softly drifting and sailing. So a crevice is a kind of like a gap in something. If you think about a rock face, you know, you get those gaps in that you can get your fingers into, or those little ledges, they're crevices. Okay, so it's basically the snow is getting everywhere and kind of minimising all of this unevenness, really making things appear smooth. And you might have started to pick up the fact that we've got all sorts of rhymes here: drifting and sifting, veiling, sailing, railing. Okay, so there's not only end rhyme here and here, but there's also internal rhyme. So that's rhyme in the middle of a line. Okay, so we've got this first sentence and we know it's talking about the snow and the effect that the snow is having. And the listing in there and the rhyme and the rhythm is all giving the impression of this steady fall of snow. So then we look at our next sentence. We're going to say, all night it fell, and identifying our pronouns, the it is clearly going to be the snow. And when full inches 7 it lay in the depth of its uncompacted lightness. This is one of those syntax things again. This is one of those word order ideas. So, and when full 7 inches lay in the depth of its uncompacted, so its unsquashed lightness. Okay, so we've got it fell all night and it was 7 inches deep. And when it was 7 inches deep, what happened? Well, we get that comma there introducing the next clause. The clouds blew off from a high and frosty heaven. Okay, so once it's 7 inches deep, off go the clouds. And all woke earlier for the unaccustomed brightness of the winter dawning. Now, 2 things there, okay? First thing is to really pay attention to the enjambment there, because it's telling you there's no end stop, there's no punctuation there. So you've got to carry on to that next sentence to make sense of what's being said. So we know that our phrase is, and all woke earlier for the unaccustomed brightness of winter dawning, right? So all woke earlier. Well, who is this all? What could it be? Well, we know the snow's been personified, but the snow isn't waking up. Something is being woken up because there is unaccustomed brightness. If you're unaccustomed to something, it's unfamiliar. You've not got used to it. So who could be being woken up by this unusual brightness? Well, we know from the top that this has been happening when men were all asleep. So it would make sense if we remember that the all who's waking up are all of the people. So they wake up to this unusual whiteness, right? For thee is an old-fashioned way of saying because of the, okay? The strange, unheavenly glare. And here it's not glare as in kind of glaring at somebody, as in looking at them with your eyes. It's glaring in terms of the kind of brightness coming off it, being reflected off it. The eye marvelled at the dazzling whiteness. So are we taking this as just one eye? Well, I don't think it makes sense to do that. We have to take it as the eyes of all of the men. Okay, so it's a little bit of a kind of poetic way of expressing things. It's like it's saying your eyes. Okay, but the eye did this, the ear did this. So we can see that everybody's eyes marvelled. And if you have a marvellous, something is brilliant. Okay, so the eyes took in the brilliance of it all, the dazzling whiteness. The ear hearkened to the stillness of the solemn air. Now, we're also going to remember that if we're dealing with old-fashioned language, in amongst all our tis and thus and hence and thou and thee, we've also often got the word hark, either spelt with that E or spelt without an E, and it means listen, okay, or listened. So the ear listened to the stillness of the solemn air. A little bit more personification in there, okay? The air is solemn at this point. No sound of wheel rumbling, nor of foot falling. Now, footfall, that idea of hearing the fall of his steps, the fall of his feet. Again, another kind of old-fashioned way of saying people walking by, right? It's not an actual literal fall down some stairs. If you think of it as the foot hitting the ground, footfall, the fall of their footsteps, is that way of expressing treading, stepping. The only time we tend to use it in modern language actually is when we're talking about shops and how many customers go past a shop. You still occasionally hear people saying that the footfall in a street or in a shopping mall or something has been light or heavy. It means the number of people walking past, right? So we don't have the sound of a wheel rumbling or of people walking past, and the busy morning cries came thin and spare. Now, you might not know the word spare in that sense. We take it that, there's an extra thing if something is spare. It's kind of like sparse, okay? Kind of like if it's sparingly, it means that there's not very much of it, not very many of them. So, there's not really a lot of noise, and the cries that are there are thin, and there's not very many of them. Then boys I heard, as they went to school, calling, Again, syntax-wise, then I heard boys as they went to school, calling. They gathered up the crystal manna to freeze their tongues with tasting. Okay, now remember we've got that enjambment. We've got kind of used to the end stops, but this is enjambment, so we carry on. So you might not know what manna is. If you don't, then just remember it's kind of heavenly food. Okay, it's referred to in the Bible, manna, as being this kind of wonderful, sustaining food that God kind of gifts people with in times of trouble. But if you don't know it, kind of look out for that, because it occurs quite a lot, manna from heaven, or this was manna. It occurs quite a lot metaphorically. Crystal manna is going to be therefore crystal, wonderful food to freeze their tongues with tasting. So they ate it. Okay, the boys shouting out, they kind of collect up the snow and freeze their tongues with tasting it. They freeze their hands with snowballing. So we realise that this verb has got to also apply to that clause as well. We're doing two freezings, tongue with tasting, hands with snowballing. Or rioted in a drift. And we know that idea of a snowdrift, if you've got snow coming in and it kind of builds up and you get a kind of bank of it. If you riot, you kind of make a big rowdy, noisy, kind of chaotic noise. So they're playing in the snow, plunging up to the knees or peering up, so looking up from under the white mossed wonder. Okay, so again, this idea of white wonder, we know, moss, we know, covers things. Oh, look at the trees, they cried. Oh, look at the trees. And that apostrophe, okay, it's a different form of apostrophe to the one that's like that. This apostrophe is the O, that address, usually is kind of intensity of emotion or intensity of feeling. So this poem now, you start to get an idea of the story of it, the idea that snow has fallen in the night in London and Bridges is exploring the effect. I hope that's helped you understand it. If you wanted to, you could then have a look at the different forms of alliteration, the effect of the rhyme, the metaphors, the personification of it all, because there's an awful lot to say about this poem. Okay, bye now.